A moment of peace, a rare and precious respite in the midst of chaos. The guns fell silent. It was Christmas, a day that brought a glimmer of hope. Imagine a war, a terrible war, filled with relentless fighting and unimaginable suffering. Now, imagine the fighting stopping for a day, a brief pause in the relentless violence. On Christmas Day, 1914, this extraordinary event took place. Soldiers on both sides of World War I laid down their weapons, choosing peace over conflict. They crossed no man's land, the deadly strip of land between the trenches, to meet each other. It was a moment of peace and humanity in a time of unimaginable violence, a brief respite from the horrors of war. This was the Christmas Truce, a remarkable event in the history of warfare. It was a spontaneous event, not planned by the leaders of either side, but by the soldiers themselves. Soldiers simply decided to celebrate Christmas together, sharing a moment of joy and camaraderie. They were tired of fighting. They longed for home, for peace, for a return to normalcy. For a brief time, they were able to forget the horrors of war and remember their common humanity, finding solace in each other's company. Europe was locked in a brutal conflict. The Great War, as it was known, engulfed the continent in unprecedented violence and chaos. To understand the Christmas Truce, we need to understand the horrors of World War I. The war brought unimaginable suffering and devastation to millions. It was a new kind of war, a total war, involving entire nations and their resources. Millions of soldiers were fighting in trenches that stretched for hundreds of miles, creating a vast network of fortified positions. Conditions in the trenches were terrible, with soldiers enduring constant hardship. Soldiers lived in mud and filth, surrounded by the stench of death and decay. They were constantly under threat of enemy fire, disease, and starvation, with little respite from the horrors of war. The war had already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, leaving countless families in mourning. There seemed to be no end in sight, as the conflict dragged on with no resolution. The Christmas Truce offered a glimmer of hope in this dark time, a brief moment of peace amidst the chaos. It showed that even in the midst of war, humanity could prevail, and that the spirit of goodwill could shine through the darkest of times. German soldiers sang Silent Night. On Christmas Eve, something magical happened. German soldiers began placing candles on their trenches. They started singing Christmas carols. The sound of Silent Night drifted across no man's land. It was a sound that transcended language and nationality. British soldiers, hearing the familiar tune, were hesitant at first. They had been fighting the Germans for months. Could this be a trick? But the singing continued. Some British soldiers began to sing along. Others cautiously emerged from their trenches. Section 4. A Day of Brotherhood. Soldiers from both sides met in no man's land. On Christmas Day, the truce began in earnest. Soldiers from both sides ventured into no man's land. They met, shook hands, and exchanged greetings. They spoke in whatever languages they could, using sign language when words failed. They shared stories of home, showed pictures of loved ones, and even exchanged gifts. They found common ground in their shared humanity. They were all sons, fathers, brothers, husbands. They were all weary of war. Section 5. Gifts and Games. They shared gifts and played a friendly game of football. The soldiers shared what little food and supplies they had. Cigarettes, chocolate, and canned goods changed hands. Some even exchanged buttons from their uniforms as souvenirs. Then, in a moment that has become legendary, a game of football broke out. British and German soldiers, forgetting their differences, played alongside each other. It was a simple game, played with a makeshift ball, but it symbolized the power of human connection. Section 6. Back to battle. The truce couldn't last forever. The war continued. The Christmas truce was a brief respite. It couldn't last. By December 26th, most of the truces had ended. Soldiers returned to their trenches. Officers, angered by the fraternization, forbade further truces. The war, with all its brutality, resumed. The soldiers who had experienced the Christmas truce carried its memory with them. They had seen the enemy's face. They had shared laughter and camaraderie. They knew that the enemy was not so different from themselves. Section 7. A lasting legacy. The Christmas truce reminds us of our shared humanity. The Christmas truce of 1914 was a remarkable event, a moment of peace amidst the chaos of war. It was a testament to the power of the human spirit to transcend even the most brutal conflicts, showing that compassion and camaraderie can emerge in the unlikeliest of places. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope and humanity can prevail, lighting a path forward when all seems lost. The Christmas truce is a story that continues to inspire us today, a beacon of what is possible when we choose to see each other as fellow human beings. It is a reminder that peace is possible, even when it seems impossible, urging us to strive for understanding and unity. It is a call to remember our shared humanity, to reach out to those who are different from us, and to build a world where peace is not just a dream, but a reality we all work towards every day.